That would get us in trouble.
All right, here we go. Good afternoon. Hey, it's Marshfield Old School Times. Lyndall's here again today. That's me. Logan Dean over here behind the keyboard as our producer, and we have a great guest with us today, my cousin Scott Fraker. Scott, welcome.
My pleasure.
Scott is a Niangua graduate, 1987, and well known around the area. Certainly spent a lot of time in Marshfield growing up with family and so forth. And we're going to hear all about that. Just want everybody to appreciate the subscriptions to our show. I think we're over 140 subscribers now. And of course, really enjoy people sharing the podcasts and spreading the word out there that we're trying to capture history. Scott's got a great story, and he's just a good Christian man that I think many people look up to and appreciate. So really glad to have him with us today. So Scott, to get started, we always want to know when you came to America.
1969.
1969. What a turbulent year, right?
Right before the landing, I guess the landing on the moon and me landing on Earth, it's all around the same time.
That's right. And I remember that, if I'm not mistaken, January
the 14th.
There you go. That's right. Well, why don't you just start there and talk about your folks and kind of take us from the early years to start this thing, if you would.
Well, grew up in Marshfield.
Yeah.
Many people think that because I lived in Niangua so long or Stratford so long, that didn't understand the whole Marshfield connection. But from birth through 4, I lived in Marshfield, just off Pine Street. And my father had passed away not long after I was born. So Mom and I were there by ourselves for a number of years. She remarried. And before I started school, we moved down to a farm on the Webster-Wright County line, about as far as you can get out of there, but about the other side of Niangua.
Right. And your dad was Ronnie Fraker. Ronnie was Glenn and Phyllis Fraker's son. They had 2 sons, Ronnie and Ben. Many people know Ben Fraker. And so Ronnie, unfortunately, was a young man, and he contracted cancer and passed at, was it 24? Was that right? Was he 24 years old?
Yes.
Yeah. 24 years old in 1969. But he did get to see you born, if I recall, a couple of months before he passed away. So very tragic for the Fraker family, of course. And I certainly remember those days. I was 10, 9 or 10 at the time. But as you said, your mom lived on Pine. She worked at the bank.
She did.
And my dad worked at the bank, I know. And they were good friends. And we visited a lot. You came over to the house as a boy, young boy, with your grandparents, Glenn and Phyllis. And I know we've swapped a few stories about that, but tell them that story that you were telling me about Elvis. I thought that was kind of a neat story.
So your dad had got a new gun, and he wanted Grandpa to see it. Mm-hmm. So we went down to the gun case to kind of look at that other side of the pool table. Uh-huh. And we're all down in the basement, and Gina comes in, Gina Robinson, Fraker at the time, and comes in hooping and hollering and carrying on because she had gotten tickets for Elvis in June of 1977. She was so excited she couldn't even sit still because she couldn't wait to go to that concert.
So she was just out and about telling people, I guess. She just walked into Mom and Dad's, and you guys were there visiting. I thought that was a great story. I was a senior or had graduated that spring, so I wasn't there that night, but I hadn't heard that story. That's a great story. So you guys, you and your mom, she said she married a man from Niangua. Just tell us about Don.
Well, the story was told that he had gone to Marshfield Machinery because he had taken a sickle off of the old mower and had tied it in the back of the car. I can only imagine how he did that, but knowing him, there was a way he did that. But it fell off, and right outside Mom and I's house, and came and they got talking. So that's kind of where all of it started. And kind of how the circle goes. He and his brother Wilbur were also friends with my grandpa Glenn and Roy and Fred and all of them. So there was connection there. Right. But they began to date and got married. And he had kind of gone through a similar situation where he His wife, first wife and son both had passed away. And so when he and mom remarried, I kind of
Yeah.
took off and went from where things left
And
off.
he didn't have any other children, just the one son that had passed.
That's
So,
correct.
Yeah. So what a blessing for both families there. Of course, Don Newton. I don't know if we mentioned his last name. His name's Don Newton, and very well known in the Niangua area. And so you were raised on the Newton farm down there, like you said, almost to Grove Springs.
Closer to Grove Springs than the nine.
You made a few trips to the Crazy Corner Creamy, didn't you?
At least once a week.
Yes, a very, very popular spot in Grove Springs, Missouri. You went to Grove Spring Elementary.
No,
you went to Niangua.
If we would have lived just one more house on, I would have, and then gone to Hartman. But I was the last house in the Niangua district on M High.
Well, I couldn't remember. I know what Grove Spring kids can go to Niangua or Hartville or Lebanon or Conway or something, can't they? I mean, depending on their choice or something. So, but you were actually in the Niangua district. Okay, couldn't remember that. So, tell us about growing up on the farm. Of course, you have a sister that came along then. You might talk about Shelley and tell us a little bit about growing up in Niangua and going to Niangua High School. And I know you were a good basketball player. So don't be humble now.
I wouldn't trade that for anything. And everybody says, wouldn't you like to have gone to a bigger school that had a lot more things? And the answer to that is yes, it would have been nice at times, but I wouldn't trade the lessons learned, how the community came together, and the community traveled regardless of where we went, whether it was basketball, baseball, that the community traveled, with the team, which was always great. So you knew everybody and everybody knew you. You knew your teachers, you knew everything about one another. And you rode a school bus which seems like half of your half of your high school and grade school were on one bus, but you know them, and those relationships were fostered because of that. We've talked about this a lot. When you're growing up on a farm, and you just have to make things work. That's just what you have to do. And I'm probably 4 years old. I can't reach the pedals on any of the tractors, but I would be pulling, a wagon with maybe 125 bales of hay behind it, 3 or 4 people. And there's probably some people that's listening to this that might have been on that tractor when I was probably praying, God, don't let him go in the ditch, while he's moving this. But I can remember Dad standing in front of the tractor wheel because I couldn't hit any of the pedals, and he would put it in gear and then let the clutch out as he's walking in front of the wheel so that it didn't hit him, and I would just guide those things around in the summer. So, you'd cut, rake, bale, haul it in. I don't miss square baling.
Yeah.
I don't miss that part as much, but I do miss tractor time. Even today, and I live on a place up between here and Stratford, and have four and a half acres. I mow 4, and my wife would tell you it's important for me to have some tractor time.
Yeah. Because
the phone doesn't ring. There's no politics. Nobody's arguing about anything. It's just a place where you can think and you can imagine and kind of grow and have life and kind of dream about where life should be on that tractor. And I wouldn't trade that for anything.
I agree. I enjoy mowing myself. It is a very relaxing, peaceful part of our summers for sure.
And you can look behind you, and in this day and age, sometimes you don't know if the work you've done, has done anything. You can't see the results of that, and we're a microwave society where everybody needs to see something right now.
Laptop society.
You have to look back once in a while, though, even if you're out mowing or whatever, and at least you can look back behind you and say, okay, I did accomplish that today.
Yeah, that's right.
And there is something to be said.
It's amazing how before you mow your yard, you don't really think about how bad you need to weed eat. You just need to mow the yard. But then once you've mowed the yard, then you really realize, wow, this yard looks terrible till I get it weed eated.
Yeah.
It's the detail that you have to finish up with.
Mowed and kept are 2 different things.
But that's right. That's right. Well, Scott, one thing I wanted to mention, some of the family connections. I think some people sometimes get confused because you and I are cousins on the Fraker side. People know that I'm a cousin to the Thomas boys, Craig and Al and Brent. Well, and of course you would be as well on the Fraker side. But then on the other hand, you also are first cousins to them on your mom's side.
That's right.
So you might mention the connection there with the Arthurs and that way people maybe can put all this together, because sometimes it's hard to understand.
When we were out, when might be singing or somewhere, and somebody would come up and talk to us, and my girls were little at the time, and people would walk away, and my youngest daughter, Lyndall, would say, "Do you know everybody?" It's like, well, I don't know everybody, but everybody you've met, I'm at least related to half of them.
That's right.
Because you're related to everybody.
Right.
And kind of going back on Grandma Fraker's side, on the Marlin side, and I'm related to all the Marlins and the Frakers and the Raiders, the Youngs. I mean, there's just so many interconnections with all of that stuff. But the Marlin family settled Webster County on the Webster-Laclede County line.
Faulkner Hill area.
That's right. That's
Of course,
correct.
that was the old wire road out there,
Uh-huh.
and that's the first travel. I imagine none of this was here, but that old wire road was the first way of getting through Webster County, you might say.
And that road still sits on the historical